slave. I'll be back.
Now Charlotte Forten, this is Charlotte, this is me, Charlotte. And Charlotte Forten, she'll tell you a little bit about herself and what she was doing here in the Low Country. Y'all have come to visit. Well, she came and visited too, but she had something on her mind that she wanted to bring to the table here in the Low Country Island. So I'm going to let Charlotte speak for herself. Good evening, Charlotte.
Good evening, and thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here today.
Let's put this closer to you. There we go.
I came to Beaufort because of the Port Royal experiment. With the outbreak of the Civil War, that awakened everything. Oh my God, I was so excited about what was going on around me. Oh, I started paying attention to the war. Oh, do you know that with the Port Royal experiment, the North had taken over Port Royal within the first couple of months of the start of the war. There were about 10,000 slaves that were there, and they were freed. And the war had just started. It had just started. They were freed, but across the water, their family members were still enslaved. And they came up and they were looking for superintendents and teachers and missionaries to come down and train the contraband. They were living on this island and they were isolated from everyone. They were considered to be illiterate. They were considered to be retarded. They were untrained. Their language was a mixture of garbled English. It was imperfect words and a lot of African expressions. They really wanted to see if they could be taught. And that was a passion of mine, because I believed that if they were given the same opportunity as any other race, I believed that these people would progress in a mighty way. And I was excited because I wanted to come and I wanted to teach them. I wanted to prove what the abolitionists had been saying all along, that they could learn. So I set out. I took my application in. I came with a letter from John Greenleaf Whittier. Oh, I was going forth. And the first place I went, they ignored me. The nerves. But not one to be deterred. I just kept on going. I went to the Port Royal, the Philadelphia Port Royal Relief Association. Now, the secretary of that organization knew my abilities very well. His name was J. Miller McKim. He and I worked together as an abolitionist, and he knew what I could do. But he was hesitant. He didn't want to send me southward alone. He was afraid for me. Really? When I make my mind up to do something, I'm going to get it done. So I found a friend, a Quaker friend of mine, Mr. John Hunt. He was heading to Port Royal. He and his daughter Lizzie, they were going to open up a store. That problem was solved. I had somebody that I could go with. In October 1862, I was on a boat called the United States, headed to South Carolina. I was going to prove that the contraband could learn. Oh, I arrived on Hilton Head. It was a desolate looking place. Oh my God! It was nothing but sand and there were no buildings. It just ran out to the sea. The only thing there was the tents from the soldiers. Wow. Disappointing. Okay, so here we are. We're on our boat. And we couldn't get off right away, because we had to take an oath of allegiance before we could get off of that boat. We had to pledge allegiance to the United States and its government. We had to sign that paperwork. And we did that. I did that, and then I got off that boat and I got onto the Flora. That's the boat that belonged to General Saxton. Oh, I was on my way. I was excited. General Saxton himself was on board, and we were introduced to him. I especially liked the way he looked. Yeah, I liked the way he looked. And his manners. He was very courteous and affable. He was I thought he was a good man through and through. Anyway, so we got to Beaufort. Of course, we found out when we got here that we weren't home, because Beaufort was 6 miles from St. Helena. So we had to wait for the boat to come and get us. But Beaufort looked like a beautiful place. It had those stately houses, those grand southern houses with a veranda all around. Oh, it was just beautiful. Loved it. It was great. But we had to wait, and we went to the commissary's office to wait. There were some military gentlemen coming in and out, and the commissary, and a colonel somebody. They were in there talking smartly. The word nigger was just running around plenteously. You know, I decided early on that they were not gentlemen. Not at all. And then they started talking about rebel attacks and yellow fever and every alarming thing they could think of while nodding at each other and looking in our direction. Okay, we saw through them right away. They were not turning us away. We were not impressed with their little representation. We were going to St. Helens Island. The boat arrived, and oh, to my joy, it was Negro boatsmen who were actually going to row us across. Oh, at the time we were leaving, there was this gorgeous southern sunset. And oh, you could see the golden colors on the waters. Oh, it was beautiful. And then the Negro boatsmen, they broke the stillness. They started singing. Oh, I was impressed. They were singing, "Row, Jordan, row." Sorry. Row, Jordan, row. Want to go to heaven when I die. To see old Jordan row. Oh! I could listen to them all night long. It was amazing. Oh, I wanted them to sing Whittier's song. Oh my God, I wanted them to sing his song. Oh, about the Negro boatman. I'm going to try to make that happen. You know, he's a friend of mine, and I am going to make that happen. Oh, but when we got to St. Helena's Island, Miss Town was there with her carriage. St. Helena Island was where Miss Town set up her school. That's called the Penn School. And that's where she set up the school. And that's where I was going to be a teacher. And that's where Mr. Hunt was going to open his store. So we started down the road, and oh, as we started down the road, it was dark. The trees were full of moss. It looked eerie in the dark, hanging on the trees. But you know what? I didn't care at all. We were jubilant. We were of jubilant minds. We were so excited to be there. Oh, we started singing John Brown. And it was so funny. It amused me greatly to be singing John Brown in the middle of rebeldom. John Brown's body lies a-moldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a-moldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a-moldering in the grave. His soul keeps going on. Oh, I was excited. And I could just imagine if the Confederate could hear me singing John Brown. How perturbed they would be. because John Brown died fighting against slavery. He died for the freedom of the slaves. So John Brown's body, it's a motoring in the grave. I'm so excited. It's just amazing. We got to the superintendent's house and we were greeted warmly. I started to feel at home in the heart of Reynoldston. I was so excited. But we weren't home yet. The next day we were going to the Oaks Plantation where we were going to stay. We went there and then we had to tell them what to do to make the house habitable for us. But then we went to the school. It was just a one-room building. I watched the children and I was pleasantly surprised. They had already received some instruction in the summer, but they had made great gains. They were making great progress. They were eager to be there, and they were learning rapidly. I was so excited to be a part of this great experiment because I knew that I was going to do something great. Now, my first day as a teacher, it wasn't so great. I was in one room with about over 100 students. We were all in one room. And all of them really weren't students because the little children were left with their older siblings, and the older siblings couldn't come to school unless they brought the little children. So these children were a challenge. I think I'll have to send back home and ask for some coloring pages and some books, but not one to be deterred. After a few days of teaching and talking and discipline, nothing severe, but firmly letting them know what to expect, because they weren't used to being in a structured setting. They weren't used to being in a school. I was able to teach my students. I was so excited, and of course, one of the first things I taught them was John Brown. After a lesson, I sat down and I taught them the song of John Brown. But they also taught me some things. The children loved to sing, and they would get up and they would sing, and then they would do the ring shout. Now you'd have someone over there clapping. You'd have people over here clapping, somebody over here doing this, and they'd be making the music. And then you'd have have the rest of them, somebody's over here singing. And then the kids would get into the circle, and they start shuffling around, and they start singing. And wow, it was the most exciting thing I'd ever seen. And they would just come to life, and they would just sing, and they would just sing. And they would sing. I enjoyed it so much. They would even come by the house sometimes after hours just to do the shout for us. And we enjoyed having them teach us the shout. Now we went to church on Sunday. And because the contraband, as they were called, didn't have any way of telling time, it went by the lights, by the light outside, actually. They would come in, so they all arrived probably by about 11 o'clock. So they would sing the most melodious songs. But then after the services, because they weren't allowed to be married, we would have weddings after the services. Because now they were able to be legally married. And we would have about 6 or 7 couples after the service getting married. So that really pleased me greatly, because I felt that they wanted to do the right thing, that they didn't want to just live together, but they actually wanted to be legal. So they really, really impressed me. Now what impressed me most, because I lived on the Oaks and I was able to go to the quarters and I was able to meet the ex-slaves. And there was one who was a very intelligent man, and his name was Henry. Now, Henry was surprised that no one up north knew about him, because it appears that there was Miss Gates came, a woman named Miss Gates, and she actually called his name out in public. So he thought that everybody knew about it because she called his name out in public. Henry was one of the most intelligent people, and I loved him dearly. He amused me greatly. Nothing gave Henry more pleasure than to talk about big gun done shoot. Henry would talk about the day when the gun shoot. He said, well, missus, you know, Massa and them, they hightailed, they took off and they ran when big gun done shoot. But then Massa, he came and he told us, you know, Henry, you need to pack up and come go with us. He said, because you know, them Yankees, they ain't gonna do you no good. They don't mean you no good. They gonna send you to Cuba and they gonna kill you. I said, well, Massa, seemed to me like I just as good as dead if I go with you. So I might as well stay here if I'm dead anyway. So Master said, well, Henry, well, you know them Yankees, they just ain't gonna treat you right. He said, well, Master, I just as well take my chance with the Yankee. If I go dead, I might as well just dead right here. He said, I know Master was lying the whole time. He just wanted us to go with him so that we would still be in slavery. I loved hearing Henry tell the story about the big gun. And there was another servant named Cupid. Cupid said, old Massa came back after the North had taken over Port Royal. He snuck back on. And he told me, he said, I want you to take Patience. Patience is my wife. He wants you to take Patience, and I want you to take your children, and all y'all going over yonder, cattle, furniture, and everything with you. I look like a goat. I don't carry my wife and my children over yonder. You can take them as far as you want, and then you can come back. When Massa came back, all he ex-slaves, we done gone in the woods and we hide. He find there 1 week, he going on back by himself. I enjoyed listening to the stories of Henry and Cupid. I enjoyed talking to the people. They taught me so much about the rich history. Henry was so intelligent, yet he couldn't read, but he wanted to read. He would come to school at night just so that I could teach him how to read. And he was a quick learner. He learned quickly, and he read very well. And I see that my time is up. I'm Charlotte Forten. Come back and hear me again. I have so much to tell you about my time on these sea islands.